Welcome to another conversation in People in Fundraising. This podcast features interviews with nonprofit professionals who discuss their career journeys, lessons learned, and enthusiasm for working in fundraising. And here's your host, the founder of People in Fundraising, Tim Wilson.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the third season of the People in Fundraising Conversations podcast webcast. It is Wednesday, April 3rd, 2024, and it's about 2 years since I launched People in Fundraising as a vehicle for guests like Steffanie Brown to talk about their experience in the social impact profession and the joys, the challenges, the learning that happens as we work in the nonprofit industry. And so today, joining us from Florida is Steffanie Brown, who has been so supportive of this effort with liking and commenting on posts in the past. I just had to get you on today, so thank you so much. It's really great to meet you face to face.
Thank you, Tim. It's great to meet you as well and be here on this podcast. This is my podcast debut, so it's pretty awesome. Can't think of one that I would rather make my debut on. So I'm joining you here from Titusville, Florida. I am a fundraising operations and prospect research expert with a couple decades in the field. So right now in a bit of a transition time, as we'll probably discuss later. But like I said, good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Thank you. And in addition to your support of the podcast, we've been in the field for about the same length of time. And I think that would be interesting to kind of get your perspective in terms of how you've seen prospect research, prospect development evolve over the last 20 plus years. So before we get into that piece of it, though, Steffanie, please tell us how you entered this profession.
All right. Well, like a lot of your guests, I kind of fell into this. I started out when I was in grad school doing some work study, and it happened to be in what was called the Office of Seminary Relations, which was that school's version of the development office. And was doing everything from some communication support and to Razor's Edge. I really got in, started doing Razor's Edge database, data entry, and then learned database administration. And after about 6 or 7 years of that, my supervisor had been doing some prospect research. And he got to the point where he didn't have the bandwidth to do it anymore. And so he gave me my first assignment, which, again, speaking to the era of the time, was a manila file folder that thick with actual news clippings. And let's do some research on this person using 5 different search engines, because the Google was not the Google back then. We were going to Alta Vista and Dogpile and all that for all the different, search results. And I'm probably one of a few of us who still knows how to use a microfilm viewer, going to the library and doing that, and hard copies of all the business digests and things like that. And actually, my first prospect research assignment is my first success story. I was charged with doing some research on a Fortune 500 executive who was known to one of our advisory board members to see how many scholarships she had the capacity to fund. But at the same time, while I was researching her, I found out her husband actually had his own source of wealth. And he was the one sitting on the philanthropic boards, and they were making gifts together, but then he was making gifts separately. And he was interested in a particular area of like social impact that the school had recently started a center focusing on related issues. So I took the chance and said, hey, let's try a redirect on this. And so they listened. They took the meeting with the husband, and after a couple meetings later and introducing him to the head of this program, this person who was previously unconnected wrote a $10,000 check.
Nice.
So from then on, it got rolling from there. So yeah.
So cool. That's going to be a great win, the early stage of your career.
Yeah, absolutely. It was like, all right, this is where I'm meant to be.
Yes. Dynamite. And so how long were you at that institution?
I was there for 12 and a half years. And
Okay.
then I was in Louisville, Kentucky. And I got to the point where my supervisor was very honest that there was no room to advance my career further there, either title wise or especially money wise.
Yeah.
And so I decided to look for a new job. And I also wanted to get away from cold weather. So after a couple years, because I started searching for a new job in 2009, which
Oh,
was an adventure in
yeah,
itself,
sure.
but in early 2011, I accepted a position at Florida Institute of Technology, where I started in February of 2011, and moved south and to the beaches and the rockets and no winter. And so,
Yes.
yeah. So I was there for 13 years and just recently left that position. So
Okay. So there's definitely records of longevity in your career at these shops.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
very interesting. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, cool. Because I spent 18 years at my first place, Harvard Business School, and I don't know, if you felt similar, but for me, like the longer I was there, it felt like I see other people like coming and going at other places, and like it's not happening for me. I'm trying, or
Yeah.
or actually like
Well,
it feels comfortable, so I'm gonna stick it out. And
that was more of what it was. It was more comfortable. And I tell people that when I started at Florida Tech, at the time that I left, there was nobody in the building who was in the building when I started. There were a
oh,
couple people who had been in other departments and transferred in, but I was like the last one standing.
wow.
So yeah, we went through a lot of presidents, vice presidents, annual fund directors, lots and lots of gift officers. Yeah. Lots of changes to the org chart.
Sure, yes.
you know.
Well, yeah, that in itself is a milestone. And you've got all that institutional, cultural, workplace knowledge as well, being there that long. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a great opportunity. It was a great 13 years. It was a great 12 and a half in Louisville. I'm still close to people that I worked with there.
Mm.
And again, it's, now the season at that former place where all the people I worked with are retiring now.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah. So I was the youngest on the team by far. So it's just like, oh wow, yeah, no. Well, I guess in 10 or 15 years this will be me.
Right, right. And they go by quickly too.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Well, speaking of milestones, Steffanie, as you mentioned, you were just, the last person, the longest tenured person. You celebrated your 25th anniversary in the nonprofit sector just in January.
Yes,
So congratulations. Is 25 what, silver? I should know, but I don't.
I
But
think so. Yeah.
did you do anything to recognize, celebrate, that quarter century, 25 years?
Well, it sounds kind of funny, but I quit my job.
Oh, all right.
I started thinking about what do I want the next 25 years to look like, and at the same time, the school that I was working at was going through its own transitions. There was a lot of leadership changes, and from the very top down, and so
Okay.
I just started to feel like it was time for me to move on to a new adventure. So
Yeah.
I've been on kind of a mini sabbatical the last couple months. I've
Oh, nice.
done some consulting projects, of prospect research support. I've learned Little Green Light, learned a completely different database and Razor's Edge, which is what I've been using for 25 years. Did
Okay.
some of the Salesforce Trailhead classes, just to add to my skills. And then my significant other and I, we took a week-long road trip and we drove from Florida to Arizona and back
Oh,
and
nice.
went hiking in the Grand Canyon. So, it's just a really nice adventure time. So yeah, it's just
Yeah.
been a whole lot of fun things going on, and I'm getting ready to start a new full-time adventure later this spring. So um, it may already be official by the time this episode drops. So just stay tuned to LinkedIn. So that's where the news will break once I'm actually there. So
Sounds
a little bit different, but still helping out different organizations in the nonprofit sector. So.
excellent. Well, I'm excited to see what that reveal will be. So thank you for the teaser. And how cool, like you've blended time between January and now with certainly, the road trip, which sounds so cool. And also just filling some of that time with learning and learning new processes, databases, skills that will help you for the next 25 years. So
Absolutely. I'm always interested in learning new things. I mean, that's kind of why I'm in this business, the curiosity.
right. Absolutely. So like you, I'm in prospect research, and so I do a little bit of homework on my guests and like what's publicly available. And so when you posted about your 25th anniversary on LinkedIn, you referenced Jerry Garcia, the late longtime leader of the Grateful Dead, and a quote from one of their famous songs, "What long, strange trip it's been." And like, I love that quote. Ripple is one of my all-time favorite songs. What memorable moments stand out to you over this long, strange trip of a career? If I could pull in Jerry Garcia there to that question.
Oh, right. Well, there's just been so much. I mean, the one thing I remember most is all the great people that I've been met and have been meeting along the way, especially being involved in APRA and AFP.
Yeah.
I sit on the APRA Florida board and on my local AFP board, AFP Volusia Flagler.
Oh,
So,
okay.
I've been involved in a lot of different programs, I've presented nationally and at chapter events and done some virtual webinars and things like that. Uh, a couple years ago, I spearheaded a program on improving alumni engagement using LinkedIn Sales Navigator,
Oh,
and that won a Case Gold Award. So
hey,
that's kind
nice.
of one of my career highlights. That I've talked with people probably at about a dozen other schools and organizations about implementing similar programs at their institutions.
Mm.
It's absolutely a tremendous success. I mean, we had probably about a 35% response rate and
Wow.
about 65% donation rate of the people who responded to
Holy
outreach.
cow.
So
That's
yeah.
awesome.
So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And then all the funny things that have happened along the way. We've all got our funny stories. Some of them, like I was once asked to pull some information for a gift officer so that she could drop horoscopes.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. And that's one of those, it's like, it's not April 1st. Are you serious? Yes, you are. Okay. Yeah, that information is not publicly available. And I had a gift officer once who had an international prospect that he wanted some research on, and I had to tell him that the US government advised against doing business with this individual and their company because it was a national security risk.
Oh my goodness. Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And yeah, that was an interesting conversation. And then
Woo.
of course the ones that we all have who've been in prospect research for a while, the people who make all the $1 million promises that drop out of the clear blue sky that we are charged to prove that they are not who they say they are. I mean, those
Yes.
are always fun, and that's also a good way to do job security. It's like, see, this is why you have me.
Right. Oh,
So
that's a good
that you
point.
don't waste hours and dollars on this person who's just trying to get attention. So
Right. Yeah,
yeah.
great point. Well, yeah, I love those anecdotes. That's great because it speaks to the variety of personalities, situations, And in particular, also like being able to develop skills and present findings beyond your actual employer. And you talked about APRA Florida and AFP, like that's just so valuable to give back in that sense. So thank you.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. I used to be like everybody else and terrified of public speaking, but now it's really fun. Like it's because I get to talk about stuff that I'm already enthusiastic about. And like, really,
Yeah.
you want to listen to me talk about this for an hour? Okay.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, good point. So we're gonna go back a little bit here, Steffanie, with question 4. Because as an avid listener, you know that I sometimes make this point in the podcast when I'm transitioning from one question to another. Like, I want to get to know the person and not just the title and what the responsibilities are. So this next question falls in line with that, more of the people focus, kind of the old A&E biography series.
Yeah.
So your early career included 10 years at the Presbyterian Church USA, as you mentioned, Louisville Seminary, pastoral education, serving in with many chapel choirs. And I could be extrapolating from there, so please just bear with me. But when I think of those roles that are on your LinkedIn bio and from your career, the characteristics that come to mind as you condense sort of the church functions and the choirs and such are humility, selflessness, groundedness, striving to be more patient with your fellow humans, and serving a higher purpose. Those are some that come to mind for me. I don't know if any of those resonate particularly or stand out particularly for you and the people you worked with, but also what aspects from those roles that were focused more in the pastoral church education type environments have you brought with you as your career has progressed, please?
Yeah. Well, I think you've really nailed it in a lot of those skills, soft skills, so to speak, that you've highlighted. And, when I was making the transition, into a, definitely more secular workplace, for lack of a better word, I kind of wondered, it's like, how am I bringing any of this with me, or am I?
Yeah.
And I realized that like really those interpersonal skills, really kind of were essential in learning to work with very different personalities. And also as, I started to take on some management responsibilities, definitely came into play there. And
Yeah.
yeah, anybody who's ever worked with people, especially in management, the counseling classes and the background I had in that really came in handy on more than one occasion.
Oh,
There are
good.
definitely times when we had to deal with some, delicate personal situations, So
Yeah.
uh, anybody who knows me knows that my working philosophy is that we're people first and employees second. And
Yes.
so I think that's really my past background has really informed me in, developing that kind of approach.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That I like that people first, employees second. And I think I've been in situations where that's been inverted. And
Oh
maybe you have
yeah.
too.
I think we all have. I think we've
Yeah.
been employees first, second, third, and forget the
Yes.
rest.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I had a boss at my first stop say that, and she was a woman of faith, and had served in her church, and just a very and also had been working for about 35, maybe 40 years. So she had seen, a wide swath of humanity in various roles. But, at one point, she just couldn't help herself. And, we're all imperfect beings. And we were in a team meeting and she's like, you are resources. I've got 5 resources here. And it's like, oh boy,
Yeah, yeah.
hold
I think,
on.
I think especially from her background back in those days, when she was getting started, I think we're now a little bit in this day and age a little bit more attuned to, the whole person and the importance of mental health in the
Yes,
workplace
yeah.
and things like that. I mean, there are definitely exceptions, but I think we are more aware of it in general now.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think, that's something that we both have seen over our 25 years in this industry for, a change for the better. So
Oh,
thank
yeah.
you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Um, we have about 10 more minutes, Steffanie, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this fifth question. And then if I could possibly, give an impromptu question after that about, where you may see the next 25 years,
Mm-hmm.
however that looks. I didn't put it in the questionnaire, but we both were talking beforehand about what, don't have to stick totally to the script and maybe some questions come up naturally.
Right.
So in terms of, your tenure in this industry, which is admirable, and the giving back, as you talked about as well, what has motivated you to stay in, the larger fundraising landscape, or maybe specifically within prospect development and database and such?
Yeah. Well, uh, probably like a lot of people, probably like anybody listening to this, I want to make a difference in the world. I want to
Yeah.
make, do what I can to make the world a better place. And there's that old Frederick Buechner quote about your calling is the place where your, uh, I'm blanking on part of it, but it's, I guess your gifts and the world's hunger meet.
Oh,
And,
wow.
to kind of paraphrase that. And I think
Yeah.
that's really, what it is for me. I mean, I know that, I'm good at what I do, but I enjoy it.
Yeah.
It brings me joy. And it also brings me joy when I can see, the fruits of the labor. I hear
Yes.
the story of the donor who was so touched in meeting a prospective student that they decided to help support them to come to the university. And then
Mm.
4 years later, there they are watching that student walk across the line to get their degree.
Wow. Yeah.
Seeing programs that are saving lives and knowing it's like, hey, I helped identify some donors that made major gifts to that program that helped save lives, whether it's humans or animals or trees.
Right. Right.
There's, so that's kind of my, using, my gifts to help improve what little corner of the world I can. So that's
Yeah.
that kind of that it brings me joy. I say all the feels.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that gets back to, one of those characteristics we talked about being, grounded in what you do and how you do it, how you interact with people. And just I love that sentiment that, you found something that brings you a lot of personal fulfillment. You've learned skills, you've developed as a person and as a professional, and it's all in the spirit of making a difference. So really admirable. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And then, Steffanie, if we had a crystal ball, or you had a crystal ball, where would the next 25 years lead you? What would you hope might be some successes, attributes of, the journey forward, please?
That's a really good question. I mean, I'm looking forward to the new job adventures. Probably, and if it's true to form, I'll probably be there until I retire.
Yeah.
Given that, yeah, I tend to stay places for a long time, and 50 is getting pretty close.
Yeah.
By the time I put in my 12 or 13 years, it'll be time to do that.
Yeah.
Beyond that, once I'm no longer having to work full time, probably doing and actually probably even um, moving forward in the near future because I'm going to be full time remote at everything
Oh,
that I do, which is going to be free up a lot of time and energy. So probably doing some volunteer work, you know, with some various organizations like our local zoo.
Oh,
So
nice.
that's something I've, definitely wanted to get more involved in,
Yeah.
and definitely, time, spending time in the garden,
Yeah.
growing tomatoes, like we were talking about before we
Yes.
started taping. I had just been out in the garden picking tomatoes, but yeah, just learning, continuing to learn and grow and work with some great people and some great organizations. So I think it's going to be an interesting time in our profession in the next few years, especially with the growth of AI and machine learning and seeing how that's going to impact, what we do.
Definitely.
That said, we are all still there's still going to be a need for humans
Right.
as we all learned when wealth screening first came out. Everybody said wealth screening is going to put us out of a job. It's like, no, it still needs humans to interpret that.
Absolutely.
So it will be, and we still need humans to work on strategy and to manage portfolios, and
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
there will still be gift officers, and there will still be gift officers to manage.
That's right.
So yeah, it's just going to be really interesting to see kind of what our field turns into, how we can use these technological innovations to, further the work that we do in our sector to, like we said, make the world a better place.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, how can we leverage, technology advances and like human advances? You just talked
Right.
about, you're going to be working full-time remote. Um, you're not solely a worker, a professional. There are aspects of your life outside of work that are vital. And how do you make time and for those things that bring you joy and fulfillment? Because
Right.
that ultimately is what's really going to last. So,
Yeah. And I think, coming out of this conversation, I think that's going to be another thing that's going to be in the discussion of the working world over the next 25 years. What does it look like to have balance?
yeah.
Um, are more organizations going to embrace remote, or is there going to be some of that resistance that we're seeing in
Yeah.
some circles? I mean, it's I think that's going to continue to be, not just in our sector, but in the world in general of work.
Oh, oh, absolutely. Yeah, I just read an article last week. I didn't follow the topic closely, but I think there were two U.S. senators that proposed some type of legislation about a 32-hour work week. And
Mm,
what does that look like for salary benefits, for productivity, but what does it look like for the person as well? So,
right. Yeah. Yeah. It'll be very interesting to see, see
yeah,
what it looks like. And then what would we do with those extra hours?
right.
For people who are hourly. I mean, we know for people who are salaried,
Yeah,
we just we do what it takes to get it done.
right. Yes. Well, Steffanie, I wish you all the best in your next career adventure. And I hope at some point our paths cross. I don't know if you'll be at APRA PD in Seattle in just a few months now, but I'll be there. And so if you're there, let me know and we'll connect. And thank you again for being very supportive of people in fundraising. And it's just been a really enjoyable, very personable conversation today. So it's been an honor to have you on the program.
Thank you, Tim. Yeah, it's been great. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to make it to Seattle this year, but hopefully next year.
All right.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, for our audience, you can find Steffanie's great interview on LinkedIn and on YouTube, as well as the audio only on Spotify and Podbean. That will air on Monday, June 24th. And thank you for being subscribers, for just like Steffanie, liking, commenting from time to time on the content as it airs. And I appreciate everyone's support. And thank you again, Steffanie. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.